I want to address this idea or this belief that men don't complain about, quote, circumcision, unquote, or being preputially amputated as a child. First of all, you've got the ignorance part of it. I was ignorant. Age 35, becoming a dad, and I really never really thought about it very deeply. I just kind of figured that, yeah, okay, I'm, quote, circumcised. At the time, that's the only word I really understood. And now I know that what it is a preputial amputation. But, yeah, I didn't know anything, and I just kind of assumed that it was a good thing. There were some good reasons for it and all that. And I think, what I keep running into is that most men are in that same place. Because it happens to us so young, we're practically born without our foreskin. And we just don't have any understanding of it. So yeah, why would we complain if we don't know that we're missing something? And then there's the emotional side of it. Just look at men and how they act. We have egos, and we're kind of protective over that part of ourselves. I mean, it's kind of like they say, men get sports cars and stuff like that in order to make up for what they lack down there. Well, there's a certain level of truth to that. Well, back to the ignorance part real quick. Even though I started learning about the anatomy and everything of the foreskin, it wasn't just a single article. Like I read the article from Dr. Paul Fleiss, and I was dubious. I wasn't sure to trust what was being said there, so I started looking, and even after I learned more and more and more about how things are supposed to work down there, I didn't make all the connections right away. And I'm a little embarrassed about this, but it took me many years to really make the connection and realize, oh, that's how that works. And I'm missing that function. Oh, that's what it's supposed to be like. And I don't have that. And there were like 5 different things, and you can look up my blog or whatever, look up one of my other videos that I go into a little more detail about. It's kind of a TMI thing, but I've heard of many other men that take a while to really get this. So it's sad, but it's going to take a while for some men to come around and see the problem with this. The biggest issue I have with that is that if it takes years for men to realize and to go through the grief process and everything like that about this, and for me, I had to go through the grief process over and over and over again as I kept realizing things. And if you don't know what grief process is, look it up. It's a psychology, behavioral health thing. Anyways, the problem is if it takes you years to figure out the harm that was done to you, by the time you really get it, it's too late to sue. So, like for instance, if you're a teenager and you don't really start looking at this until you're 16, 17, 18 years old, hopefully by the time you're 18, you've really realized the pain or the harm that's been done to you and what you're missing, because you only have a couple of years, depending on what state you're in, but if you're talking about the United States, you only have a couple of years to sue if you want to try to sue, whether it be your parents or the mutilator, butcher, whatever you want to call them, or the hospital even. And there have been successful suits, so it's something to think about. Uh, Back to the emotionally protective thing. Yeah, guys have egos. The this all kind of runs together. Emotionally protective, socially unacceptable, and fear of backlash. I've spoken to many men that have actually lost their jobs when they've come out about this. So, yeah, it's a little scary to come out. Even after I realized, that this really shouldn't be happening, I still was protective about coming out publicly about this because I was afraid of ridicule and being considered weak or all that. It's kind of backwards though when you really think about it, because they say it says here considered weak. Well, honestly, it takes a strong person to come out about this. Because you are facing ridicule and everything like that. I think that there's actually a lot of men that would rather go to war and risk life and limb than face ridicule from friends and family. Face humiliation. That it happens. Just go look at social media and everything like that. Wherever some men speak out, including me, or some people come back and say you're just a big whiner or whatever. Okay, on to the actual men that do complain and that do speak out and say, "Hey, I'm not thankful." Let's start off with the men that have committed suicide over this. At least a couple that I am familiar with. There's Kevin Cagle here. There was a story about it. You can look him up. And then there's Jonathan Conte. He was an avid activist based out of San Francisco. He spent years protesting publicly outside, trying to educate people. He was a key part of getting the bloodstained pants going with the bloodstained men protesters. As far as I understand, it was him that purchased the handful of bloodstained overalls and handed them out to guys like Brother K and the others that were going to. I can't remember whether they were. I think they were going to the AAP to protest, and that wasn't the beginning of the bloodstained outfit, but definitely a big moment in history where it really started taking off. And another one that's not here, but is very popular. It's a little different. David Reamer. David had a botched circumcision, botched preputial amputation, and they turned him into a girl. And if you look up Dr. Money, you can get more detail on this, and it relates to intersex or DSD situations. And then there's this guy here that he attempted suicide because of his botched circumcision. So, and these are not the only stories that I've heard of, come across, where suicide, or people have talked about suicide because of this topic. So yes, some men do take it that severely. And I'd be really grateful if someone would put in the comments if they've come across cases where women have committed suicide over their genital mutilation, or female genital mutilation, female circumcision. I haven't seen any yet. I know the whole thing. Oh, it's not comparable or not equal or whatever. It's still non-therapeutic, non-consensual, non-therapeutic genital cutting. So it is something to talk about. It is something to look at. The cultures where it's performed. The numbers I've seen is like 80% or so of the women that have endured it are happy that they did. Just like you'd probably find at least 80% of men in the U.S. that have been preputially amputated or, quote, circumcised, and they think that they're better off for it. So it is something to discuss. And there are celebrities like George Carlin here and Jimmy Kimmel and Howard Stern. Howard's kind of interesting. I've watched some of his videos over time, and it seems to me that he's gotten more and more outspoken about it. And Ron Lowe, who created TLC Tugger, he interviewed with Howard Stern, and that's where I think things really got going with Howard. And very recently, this guy, Mewtwo King, or M2K, he just recently came out about his botched circumcision. Now, I consider them all botched if it's not consensual and not therapeutic. And anyways, he hates it too. And he came out. He's extremely popular. If you look at the number here, it's 702, nearly 703,000 views of this video. I mean, I had no idea that this guy was so popular because I'm not really into the gaming realm, but he obviously is extremely popular. Even though he only has 117,000 subscribers, he got a lot of views on this topic. It trended for a while, and he just posted this. So today's July 8th. He posted that back on July 4th. So just in about, I took this image early this morning. So just not like 3 days worth of being out there on the internet, and got that many views. So. And then there's obviously the protesters. Again, back to the protesters, like we were talking about with Jonathan Conte, the guys that go out there with the bloodstained pants. And there's intact men that also protest in solidarity and in order to help protect the next generation. A whole bunch of them are victims. And more protesters. And I love this one where someone put a face over. Actually, I think he was actually wearing a mask in this picture. But I do know, as far as I understand, this guy is a victim. And in Europe, there's a good bit of advocacy or activism as well, where Europe is a very low cut rate, but it's still being protested, and good reasons, because there's challenges with FGM in Europe, particularly with people migrating there from female genital cutting cultures. And then there's the Jews, and I don't say this to try to be anti-Semitic. I'm called anti-Semitic all the time, but there are many, many, many Jews. I keep finding more Jews, or finding out that a lot of the people that do protest were born Jewish. So, and they go out and protest on the streets, and they even protest in Israel. And there's also men that got cut as adults that complain. Yes. Now, I'll be honest, there are men that got cut as adults and they're happy or happier or whatever. Most of the time I find out, though, that those men that are happier had issues, they had health issues. So they don't necessarily know what it would have been like to have a healthy, normal penis. Sorry, give me a minute. So yeah, there's a handful. I'll give you some time to read through some of these if you want. There are also cases where I've come across men that said they were happy after getting cut as adults. And I'd ask them piercing questions like, okay, well, how much of your frenulum did you keep? Or how much inner mucosa do you still have? What's your current coverage index? And I often find out, well, actually still have some glands coverage. So, this is not a binary thing. It's not like, okay, you're either circumcised or you're not. You can have a tiny little bit of your prepuce removed. You could have a high and tight cut. So it's not black and white, and it's not as easy as saying, well, I'm circumcised and I'm happy, and, oh, I got circumcised as an adult and I'm happy. Well, okay. Give me more detail. And then there's Africa. So there's areas in Africa that have been circumcising for thousands of years. And there's also areas in Africa where they weren't, and the U.S. and or whoever else, people that think that it's a good idea to circumcise, particularly to try to address the HIV thing, went in and have been selling these people on the idea of getting preputially amputated in order to reduce the chances of HIV. It's led many cases where people think that it's a replacement for a condom, but it's not. There's even this case here, I'm forgetting the name of the tribe right now, but this guy actually wrote a book. This is where it's been culturally ingrained forever, where they get cut as, I think, like age 18 or really late teens to enter adulthood. And this guy, he wasn't happy with the results, and he decided to write a book about it. And there's entire sections on websites like Your Whole Baby and Men Do Complain and Circumcision Harm, where there's testimonials, blog articles, where men write up their stories about how they feel that they've been harmed, how it's hurt them, how it's reduced, how they believe their sexual enjoyment has been reduced. There's even a book called Unspeakable Mutilations. You can get it on YouTube. I'm sorry, not on YouTube. On Amazon. Oh, lovely. I left my honey thing on there. Anyways, yeah, there's 50 men that of widely differing ages that I explain how they believe it's harmed their self-esteem, physical well-being, and sexual experience. And there's YouTubers. There's several YouTubers that speak out about this, and I'm only showing the YouTubers that are men that are not happy that they were cut. There's several other YouTubers obviously that talk about it, but not necessarily men that are men, or there's women that talk about it too, and the challenges of it and all that. And there's Daniel Rold with Brendan Marotta, the guy that wrote did the American Circumcision documentary. And Daniel, he's cared so much about this issue that he's not only done outdoor protesting, but he's put together process and a database to reach out to media outlets to communicate with them when certain things are going on, to try to get them to put out stories in the newspapers or the news, in the on TV or whatever. And Ron Lowe, he's got the TLC Tugger channel. He's great. He's done like multiple music things about the topic. It's fun. So the TLC Tugger, if you don't know what that is, that's one of the tools available for doing foreskin restoration. And you can look into or try to find out how many of the various foreskin restoration products that exist out there and how many have been sold, because that'll give you an idea of how many men actually exist that are not happy. I have this idea that for like every one man that you come across that complains, there's probably at least 1,000 or more that are not happy that don't complain publicly. And Bonobo 3D, that's James Lowen. He's been protesting this for decades, and he recently got very involved with Bloodstained Men, and over the past few years, and went out and took video and took pictures, did interviews. As you can see, he's got over 5,000 subscribers. He's got tons of videos he's done. So it's a great channel to go check out if you want to hear from people about the topic. There's this video that's I've seen. I've actually seen the actual video, but this video here doesn't actually show this young man talking to his mom, complaining about it. His mom reacted pretty severely. You can catch all the audio in this particular one here on Jeremy Miller's YouTube page. It really goes to show how and why guys are shut down when they want to complain about it. Just like this mother told him to, get over it or whatever. Sometimes people just need to complain about what was done to them, and just need to have a little empathy, not to be told to shut up. And and at this point, for me, I don't speak out to get empathy or sympathy or whatever. I do it because my conscience forces me to. Because as long as I'm not speaking out, more and more children are going to get their genitals cut without good need. And then there are the YouTubers like Al Thrasher here that, well, this isn't the only one. I've seen others. His account got terminated due to multiple severe violations of the policy prohibiting hate speech. Well, it's hard to not hate when you're angry about what was done, about having part of your body cut off. So I've seen many cases where particularly male victims have been canceled or shut down or shut out, censored by YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. Those are three that I primarily use. I've heard of other platforms blocking or kicking out people that try to speak out about this. It's kind of sad. The freedom of speech right only goes so far, yes. And here's a video. This is actually a good documentary by Andre Levy, where he captures a bunch of men and others speaking out that are Jewish. Jews that speak out against circumcision. And this has managed to stay on YouTube. I'm kind of happily surprised that it's held out there. As far as I've heard, it's actually been censored in other areas. So, and then there's many cases where there's comedians or comedy or talk shows where men have spoken out about this. For instance, here, this is Andy Richter. You see here, he's a preputial amputee. He doesn't really seem to speak out against it strongly in this. And if you watch the video, you can probably imagine part of why. But he is one of the men, like me, that has a son or more that he kept intact, even though he was cut himself. So, kind of funny. And here's another guy that stand-up comedian, and people laughed at him and everything, but he really delved into the details about how he hates it. There's another stand-up comedian. I should have got his video and not put it on here, but he also did a little plug in how he misses his foreskin. People laugh, but I think it gets people thinking at the same time. And there's Twitter. Twitter's a great place to talk about genital autonomy, and they'll across the board, not just males. But there's several cases where you can find men speaking out. And you can search for like hashtag #mendocomplain or hashtag iamnotthankful. Or I hate being circumcised. And you can find several tweets out there. You can do the same thing, search on Google or Bing or whatever your favorite search engine is, and search for those hashtags and find pictures and articles and stuff like that about it. There's interviews I could probably find more, but gosh, I spent a whole day collecting all these and trying to put them together. Interviews of men that complain. Here's one guy that has amniotic banding syndrome, and he's gone through, I guess he said 20 surgeries to address that. If you look at his fingers, you can see that they're short. Some of them are short. But when it comes to the fact that he was preputially amputated, he is not happy about it, because that was one surgery that was totally unnecessary, cosmetic, and damaging. All the other things were necessary. All the other surgeries were necessary. That one was not. So he speaks out. There's an abundance of pages and groups on Facebook where circumcised men do complain, and circumcised men who complain. This is a public group, so you can see what members say without having to be in the group. There's like another group, another group called I Hate Being Circumcised, which is private. And then there's books like this one by Jay Jackson. I actually chatted with him, and he struggles with like Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that, and talking about it in person. So he does better just writing his thoughts down and everything like that. And so he did so and wrote a book about his feelings on the topic and all. I haven't seen the book yet myself, but here's a case where a man goes as far as writing a book. And I've seen other books. Saw another one that was released and then disappeared. I don't know how marketable these books are. Not very many people want to face this topic. I wish Jay the best that he sells it. And there's David Smith here over in UK. He leads up a couple of nonprofits that speak out about genital autonomy, and I know that he is not happy about himself, about what was done to him. And then there's tons and tons of images, pictures of men holding signs like what you see here in the Circumcision Resources.org gallery, where they're basically all complaining. And you can find them on the internet just by doing various searches like hashtag men do complain or hashtag iamnotthankful, and scrolling through the images. I did a lot to collect a whole bunch and put them on this gallery on Circumcision Resources. I'll share some others here with you. Not everyone wants to show their face, so Scott Seelig decided to do a cartoony thing. David Marr, I know him. He's involved in various ways in activism, and he decided to do a whole write-up. So there you go. A lot of men do complain, and that's partly, percentage-wise, it'd be interesting to compare to women that complain about female circumcision. Please, correct me, put down in the comments that, there's, point to women that complain. I do know a handful that are public activists about female circumcision. But when you look at the numbers worldwide, there's over 1 billion men that have been cut, while there's been 200,000, according to the last estimate from the WHO. 200,000. 1 billion to 200,000. 200 million. Sorry. 1 billion men, 200 million women that have dealt with genital cutting. And then who knows how many intersex children that have been cut unnecessarily. But there you go. Hopefully that addressed your belief that men don't complain, because they obviously very much clearly do. Thank you.